Hello again, everyone. Edwin Learnard back once again. In this YouTube astrological segment, I'm going to be talking about the 8th house in astrology. Now, first off, as far as what it rules, um, 8th house in astrology is associated with transformation, intimate sexual relationships, crisis situations, death, shared resources, moral, emotional, monetary support, debts. It can be issues with credit card. Somebody's got like Neptune hitting their 8th house. It could be credit card fraud they may be more susceptible to. Insurance, it's associated with loans. Also deep research and investigation, and also surgery as well. Now, and also, I mean, and the 8th house is also associated. It's criminal profiling uh, as well. So anyway, now when you look at the 8th house in astrology, it's important to look at the sign on the cusp of the house. That could show perhaps certain attitudes and energy associated with the 8th house, how you may go about 8th house matters, things that could be just simply 8th house related. I mean, the 8th house is connected with surgery. I have a Sagittarius on the cusp of my 8th house. It could indicate that I might have at some point in time, there might be surgery I might have to deal with on something with the thighs or the sciatic nerve or liver issues. Now, the thing about it is when and again, going like to my example, having Sagittarius on the cusp of the 8th house, this could be about a lot of exuberance and enthusiasm and expansive energy in matters with moral support, enthusiastically giving, perhaps moral, emotional, and monetary support to others. And the thing is, and if the 8th house is also about rebirth and regeneration. So for me, if I'm kind of trying to come back from some situation, or I was feeling despondent or down in the dumps and I'm trying to revive myself, it could be very fortuitous for that, given that Sagittarius on the cusp of my 8th house, and it is it's very benign, obviously a benign zodiac sign, given that it's ruled by Jupiter. And the thing about this too is looking at, I mean, the sign on the cusp of the house is very important, and it's like another example, like with my case, Sagittarius on the 8th house cusp. It could be very fortuitous too, for inheritances, for actually receiving that emotional, moral, and monetary support. It matters with shared resources, getting a loan when it is needed. Now, it's also important too to see if the house inhabits any planets, because that, of course, will flavor the house. Now, I don't have any planets in my 8th house in my natal chart, but let's take somebody that has Neptune in their 8th house as an example. Now, we have looking at if somebody has Neptune in their 8th house, I mean, this could obviously manifest in a multitude of ways. 8th house is the house of death. There may be death by drowning or by sea. If I'm not, I don't remember exactly, but there was I think her last name was Rivera. She was a actress on Glee, and she had died as a result of drowning. Now, I don't know if it was, what if I don't know. I think she may have had Neptune in her 8th house in her chart, and if that's the case, that could be an indicator of death by drowning, if that was the case. But anyway, if Neptune is in the 8th house, that is, I mean, that there could be, I mean, as far as death goes, it could be through some drug or alcohol consumption. It could be an accidental chemical assimilation, or again going back to the drowning. It could also be as well somebody that gets involved in a spiritual transformation. It could also be somebody that might be susceptible to some kind of credit card fraud or deception or duplicitous or deceptive behavior from a sexual partner, one is in an intimate relationship with. Now, Another thing to look at, it's important to look at if there's any aspects to the eighth house cusp or if there's any planets in it. Now, any I don't have any planets going. Not I talked about that before. If there's any planets in it, if there's any, look to see if there's any aspects to the eighth house cusp or aspects to the planets that are in the eighth house cusp, if applicable in your case. Now, I don't have any planets in my eighth house cusp, but my moon in Gemini makes an opposition to my eighth house cusp. So, I mean, that's another thing that can obviously manifest in a number of ways. And you have the moon is in my first house in my natal chart. So we're talking about things that are more of personal gratification associated with the moon in Gemini, which of course could be about variety, versatility, communications that serve as emotional need, and opposing that of actually perhaps giving more exuberant, enthusiastic, moral, emotional, monetary support to others. And those are, and it shows that they're in opposition. So what it can indicate is that there could be, maybe you're doing much of one but not the other. And the thing about it is, and the fact is, it could also, I mean, the fact that their opposition, of course, that's adversarial. Moon and Gemini could also have restlessness in their home life, and having that eighth house with Sagittarius on it, that could show sometimes a little bit, maybe too much generosity, and maybe being too foolhardy with your own as far as sharing resources with others, and that could be tied in perhaps to having the moon in terms of the restlessness in the home life. And it could also, in that restlessness in the home life, can maybe play a role in me not focusing on doing things connected with shared resources for others, or giving or giving others that emotional, that monetary support, or even an intimate relationship as well. The moon in Gemini, as far as not wanting to be pinned down on a subconscious level, the fact it opposes that Sagittarius energy is an indicator on the eighth house cusp of intimate relationships. That could be an indicator that moon Gemini energy could be playing a role, because it's not having really many intimate connections. The fact that it's making the opposition to that eighth house cusp. So anyway, well, another thing, it's important to also look at, see what house the ruler of the eighth house falls in. Now, mine is Jupiter, because I have Sagittarius on the cusp of the eighth house. So the ruler is Jupiter, and it falls in my sixth house. Now, one way that could manifest or pan out, it could be a death through some debilitating illness. It could, the fact that it's Jupiter, could be something liver related. This is something too. Jupiter, I mean, you look at this energy as well, but it could also be about incorporating the occult, which can include astrology, into the day-to-day routine, which is what I basically do, and really, and two, it could be. I mean, there's other ways, of course, that could actually. That could manifest and pan out, and also that deep research in the day-to-day routine and things of that nature. And anyway, and the thing about it is, and of course everybody, it could affect other people in different ways. I mean, and one person could have the ruler of the eighth house in the sixth house. It could mean one thing. For another person, it might mean something maybe slightly different. It could be somebody that makes a health that's interested in making a health transformation of some kind. And anyway, well, next thing I want to talk about is that it's also important to look at transits that involve the eighth house, because when you're talking about transits in astrology, they can be about spontaneous, unexpected events that may occur in one's life, and it can be of significance. Now, if somebody is having, for example, transit Saturn hit their 8th house, hold on a moment, people. That could obviously mean it could resonate. It could really be a lot of it could have a lot of different meanings to it. If you have transit Saturn in the 8th house, it could be about diminished libido, maybe also having restrictions in moral, emotional, monetary support, or you might be experiencing coldness in your intimate relationships, or there might be some limitation on inheritance. But it could also be about establishing a legacy through being responsible, by being mature, disciplined, and structured, and also dealing a responsibility, perhaps dealing with crisis situations. It could be surgery on something Saturn related, such as something with the knees, the bones, the joints, the hamstrings, anything that could be Saturn related. It could be a father. Your father might be playing a role, or an older person might be playing a role in a transformation in your life, or dealing with a crisis situation. It could be that older people in general are more involved in a shared resources situation with you. I mean, there's so many ways things that this could, that these transits can actually, how they can manifest. Now, last but not least, what's important too, as far as the 8th house goes, are progressions that involve that house. Now, in a progressed chart, let's say, for example, somebody's got they got Mercury in Virgo in the 8th house in their progressed chart. It could be a lot of analytical, astrological writings, or a lot of detail-oriented writings, communications regarding 8th house matters, like it could be an insurance or tax matter. It could be a lot of mental analysis and dissection of somebody you're in an intimate relationship with. Let's take another example. Let's say you actually have, Uranus making an adverse aspect to the 8th house cusp in a progressed chart. That could be dealing with a lot of fluctuation, perhaps, or shocking experiences. Might be causing some difficulty in dealing. Maybe it might be causing some difficulty in doing something 8th house related, such as maybe being able to give some kind of support to others. It might be, as far as moral, emotional, monetary support. It might be causing some difficulties in terms of a sexual relationship. Uranus can also be about friendships. It could be that friendships maybe might be doing something that are maybe causing some negative 8th house issue, whether it's some kind of debt issue that you may be dealing with, or having an adverse effect on a credit card, maybe a situation. I mean, this could be, obviously, this is something that can manifest in a multitude of ways. So anyway, people, that will conclude this YouTube astrological segment. Until next time, people, Edwin Learnard saying stay well.